Hey, welcome to Fresh Air at 5, episode 116. In this episode, you're going to hear some great things. Got a new to me podcast to share with you, and it's Happy Easter at the end of the week. Good Friday, so I didn't walk on the Friday or the Thursday, but there's some great listens in here that I'm bringing you. I think I got 5 or 6 different shows to share with you. All right, Happy Easter, and take care. Talk to you soon. Without further ado, here's Fresh Air at 5.
Hi, I'm Lisette Jacobson, host of the Black, Brown, and Bilingue podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAt5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Good morning, PLN. It's April 3, 2023. This weekend was April Fool's Day. I read a lot of fun memes, a lot of fun stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and that was related to, having some fun on April Fool's Day. One of my favorites was that out at Lake Louise, British Columbia, they are excited about draining the lake so they can get the fresh teal blue paint and paint the bottom of the lake so that when the spring water runs off the mountains and into the lake, that it's nice and picturesque. So like a painting. So if you know about Lake Louise, that's a little reference. And I laughed really hard when I saw that. There's a whole bunch of other things like the blue strawberries. Have you seen those? Those are incredible. It's called cyanosis, and they only come out on April 1st. So that was kind of fun to see that. I'm like, whoa, where can I get some of those? And I actually fell for it for a moment. Okay, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to a new to me podcast called Black, Brown, and Bilingue, and it's with Lisette Jacobson and Maurice McDavid, who are 2 educators, I believe, in Illinois, and they are in the United States, and it was great to hear you talk together. The reason this is new to me and came across my channel is because we are part of the Educational Podcast Network, a group of educators and podcasters that have a podcast together with under the umbrella of Chris Nessie and the work that he's been doing over the past 10 years with House of Ed Tech, and Educational Podcast Network has lots of great other podcast minds in there. There is many others, House of Ed Tech, and so on. So go take a listen to some of those podcasts. Okay, Maurice and Lisette, I appreciate hearing your voices. Welcome to the network. And this is the recap of season 3 of your podcast. So I've missed all the rest. I will start listening in the future as we move forward. And it's great to hear you talk about multiculturalism, identity, language, and, internal joy. So that's what I took home from this. All right, thanks so much, and glad. Hey, PLN, April 4, 2023. Good morning to you. How are you doing? I'm doing okay. This second week back after spring break has been just, slamming. We, had a lot going on last week, as you heard, and now this week with school and home and family and all that's going on, it's only Tuesday, and it feels like it's Wednesday or Thursday already, but that's all right. It's a short week. We've got Good Friday and Easter Monday coming up, so I've got a 4-day weekend coming up, so I'll be able to get some rest then. So yes. All right, I hope you're doing well. This morning I listened to episode 19 of the EdTech News Brief as Jake Miller brings us a fantastic episode of the EdTech News Brief. In bringing us magic, tool, the magic design tool in Canva. And he talks about Canva and how was Canva Create back on March 23rd. I saw part of it. I decided to wait for the news to come out. And Jake, thanks for bringing it to us instead of watching the whole event, because I'm not a Canva power user. I'm getting into it. But yes, so anyhow, Canva Magic Design uses AI to help you design presentations and to design graphics and things like that. So it's there. I have dabbled with it and I will continue to dabble. So that's there. He also he had Joe Merrill talk about the math solver in Microsoft. And, this takes me back to the days of Wolfram Alpha, for solving math problems or photo math. But this is built into, I think it's Bing. Edge, built into Edge, the browser. So I've got to check that out. And some other news that's coming on is that Google has brought forth Google Bard. It's their solution, or from what I'm hearing here, not so much a solution for, responding to OpenAI, ChatGPT, as well as Google Bing. All right, that's all I got for right now from Jake. So appreciate it, Jake. Talk to you. Bye. One more thing for April 4, 2023. The recent episode of Tech Tools for Teachers with Shanna Martins and her husband Fuzz Martins, who's the producer of our show. They talk this week about Titanic Week. It's like Discovery Channel's Shark Week, but this is about the Titanic. And I had no idea people had such a fascination with the Titanic. I know it was a big boat. Do you know what day it sailed? I learned that on this segment of Fresh Air at 5 called Learning Stuff. Okay, no, I learn stuff all the time on Fresh Air at 5, so it's not a new segment. It's actually not even a segment. But I learned today what day the Titanic sailed, and I learned what day the Titanic sunk. Who knew? You could know. A lot of people can know these things. A simple Google search could tell me all manner of things. But Shanna and Fuzz bring us two websites that we should check out. One is the Encyclopedia Titanica.org or com. It's in the show notes for her podcast. So the link is there. And she says there's all manner of resources and connections and things about the Titanic and the passengers and what was going on in the world around that time and thing. Also, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, I believe that's what that stands for. Do you know what RMS Titanic stands for? RMS. That's another curiosity that I learned about this morning. NOAA's there about the weather and how they have a section on the Titanic. So resources that are there, and then our connection to things like events like these beyond the moment that it happened. How did we get there? There's big ships all around the world right now that at the time weren't there to be able to sail the oceans wide like we do today. So the ocean's awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Shanna. Thank you, Fuzz. And Shanna, I called you Shauna last week because I flipped that first N into a U. All right, that's all. Take a listen. Bye-bye. The last thing for April 4, 2023. As I'm wrapping this up, I listened to Evolving with Gratitude, one of my now favorite podcasts because of the positive messages and hope that I hear talked about by Lainie with her guests that she brings on. And in episode 51 of Evolving with Gratitude, Lainie speaks with Stacy Ross Cohen, who is the founder of I actually can't even remember the name of the company, Stacy. I apologize. But she is out of New York and has a communications company and talks about communications and how communications is so important in our world today. She has a book coming out that probably might actually be out by now called Brand Up, the ultimate playbook for college and career success in the digital world. And those words are all significant in that title. Not by accident, Stacy, for sure. But you have got a book for teens and young people to be able to bring themselves to the fore so that they stand out in this digital world of, I'd call it madness and chaos. And, how do you make yourself present there so that people can see the value that you can bring? And it's not about me, but it's about what you can do for others. And I really appreciate hearing that message. All right, so Stacy talks about gratitude being the superpower, identifying your superpower. Like what brings you. I think about the Marvel and DC, superheroes and their process of discovery about who they are and working through controlling their superpower. We've all got it, but what can we identify it? Can we identify how we can make an impact, on those around us and what we can do? So, yes, fantastic. Appreciate it. And be encouraged today. Take a listen to Evolving with Gratitude. Subscribe if you don't do so, because Lainie brings us gold regularly. Peace out. Bye. Hey, PL, on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. This morning is 0 degrees Celsius, crisp out. The moon is full over there. And it's a beautiful morning. Beautiful morning. It's April. It shouldn't be 0 in the mornings, but I guess with climate change in the world, weird things happen. And yes, so we're feeling the impacts of these things. All right. Or maybe just normal. But anyhow, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to the House of EdTech, episode 221. Hey, Mr. Nessie, this is Brian here. What if you got any good advice about EdTech that you can give us? Well, hey, you know what? Chris brings us value and awesomeness as we listen to episode 221 of House of EdTech. And on this episode, Chris has an interview with an innovator. His name is Frank Bouchard. He's the founder of a product called Whitebook, which is a whiteboard marker type whiteboard, like a flip chart. And that's how it started for him. Not as exactly as a flip chart, but as a notebook that was erasable and he can work with. Back a while ago, I received a thing called Rocketbook, which is like a scannable notebook. They have a product that you can put in the microwave and it erases the content on the pages so you can reuse this notebook. But differently than that, you got yourself your whiteboard. Can you imagine having a whiteboard with you all the time? Back in 2008, when I was a student teacher, I went to Home Depot and I got some whiteboard paint, and I took a piece of MDF and I put whiteboard paint on one side of it and let it dry and cure properly, cut it into sheets that were about probably 16 inches by maybe 9 inches wide, and pieces of whiteboard were made, and they were 1/4 inch thick, and they're heavy. They're made of MDF. I still have them. My daughter and my kids at my own home still use these tools for doing math and things like that. My daughter just last night said, "Dad, can you cut one of these in half so I can take it to school with me?" All right, coming back. I got more to say. Hang on. One more thing for April 5, 2023. Continuing my thoughts on the House of EdTech, episode 221, as Chris was talking with Frank Bouchard, the founder of Whitebook. He was an engineer back in the day, still is an engineer. And Frank, I appreciate hearing your story of development, because that design story and now where you're at today with your company is pretty nifty and pretty cool. We've got a personal problem that we're trying to solve, and you came up with a solution for yourself, and people around you are like, what have you got? At first it was like, well, look at this guy. Can't even write on paper probably. You probably got lots of looks, but at the end of the day, you weren't cutting down forests like I was when I was in university. I believe it's important that we do work and practice work and show our work. Back in the day, my buddies and I, when I was studying chemistry, we would go to the university on a Sunday afternoon and find a vacant classroom that had chalk on the ledge of the chalkboard. We would write, we would work together, we would do this stuff, but then, we could erase it and get on to the next problem. collaboratively, it's a great way that you can work together. So I think whiteboards in classrooms and wipeable surfaces are so important. So I'm going to check out your products. Maybe I'll even look at a workbook for my daughter so that she can not have to take a 1/4-inch piece of MDF in her backpack so that she can do work in her classroom. And having the app so that she can scan and take a picture of it, so important. Okay, I could go on and on. I love this. This is awesome. Frank and Chris, thanks for the great conversation and innovation that you're bringing. All right, there's EdTech recommendations in here. Canva updates that happened during Canva Create in the March 23rd that Chris brings us, and Chrome extensions. Chris, I'm going to check out the one Chrome extension about AI Compose and how we can have an AI writing tool at our fingertips. And I really appreciate you bringing us Fonz Mendoza's blog article about the responsible use of AI technology. All right, more. I'm going to reach out, Chris. I got a question for you about something I saw. Okay, take care. Bye. So last thing for April 5, 2023. Good morning to you, Fonz and Lainie. It came across my feed, and on Monday, I think it was that I was just watching on Twitter or something, and it popped up that you're having a live show, Fonz, and you do your show live now, and that's pretty cool. It just doesn't work with my time to get on, and honestly, it's been a bit since I've listened to My Tech Life. Thanks for having me on as a guest about 1.5 years ago, or almost 2. Has it been 2 years already? I think it has been 2 years that I was a guest in your show back in the double digits, and now you're up at episode 189, and you talked with Lainie Rowell. And Lainie, it's so good to hear your voice in a different context. You are a fantastic interviewer, and I love listening to Evolving with Gratitude, as you know. And Fonz, you got a gem on your podcast as Lainie talks about gratitude practices and the power of gratitude. So, Fonz, I appreciate hearing your voice again. Apologize, it's been a while. The algorithm took you out of my queue. Maybe just, I don't know, not sure why. But I'm back listening to My Tech Life. People, you got to subscribe and listen to My Tech Life. You need a picker-upper. Fonz brings people to talk about their life and their experience and technology and how we do the things that we do. So, Lainie, it's great to hear your story from a different perspective, because I haven't heard a lot of your story. I haven't heard you on many podcasts, but I think that's coming around, that we're going to hear more about you. And yes, so, it's fantastic. Gratitude makes such a huge difference. Huge difference. I was just sitting with our men's group this past week talking about how do we get through this thing, that life is hard and all this stuff, that we have to pause and we have to take notice of the things that are around us that are important, the little things, and not taking things for granted. That is one thing that the pandemic for me really highlighted, was the things that I take for granted. And also, like I said last week, when I was in the midst of renovations, how I take my couch for granted because I couldn't sit on it for a while because it was covered in plastic. All right, talk to you guys later. Talk soon. Okay, bye-bye. All right, this one is called After the Last Thing. So when you have that thought after you're done saying the last thing that you said you were going to say? Well, here I am now. It's April 5, 2023, and after the last thing. I just wanted to say that, listening to My Tech Life, episode 189 with Fonz and Lainie Rowell, a guest, talking about the power of gratitude and practices of that, we take some things for granted. I'm on Twitter, and George Koros was the instigator of that problem. Not problem, it's awesome. It's like I swipe on Twitter. I sit and I can swipe for hours. But it's about connection with people. Twitter has allowed me to connect with so many people. And if you're not on Twitter, well, you're reading this because you're listening to this because you're on Twitter. But you got to talk to people about getting on Twitter because of connections. I'm trying to encourage a fellow colleague to get into Twitter because it will be good for her practice and making those connections. As Fresh Air at 5, as I listen to podcasts and I post it here and I reflect on things that I am learning and seeing and hearing, it's allowed me to make connections that have had me as guests on people's podcasts, over the years. And it's not, people see that and go, wow, Brian, you're on a podcast. But it's about the small consistent things like, Lainie, you said about Fonz and how he has gotten to where he's at. I'm looking forward, Fonz, to hearing your interview with Lainie on Evolving with Gratitude coming up soon. And that's super fantastic. It was fantastic to talk to her, as I was a guest recently on her podcast as well. All right. Oh, and Fonz, thanks for the shout out in the middle of your podcast with Lainie, that you's like, yeah, I go through my podcatcher list, and Brian Carpenter comes up and others come up, and thanks for listening to Fresh Air at 5. Appreciate it. Makes my heart happy that I can just share some of the things that are going on with me and share them with the world outside of my little community here where I live. Hey, look at that. Look at that behind me. The sun's coming up. It's a beautiful day. And if we turn around this way, behind me, I've been looking at the full moon back in under the trees there. Where is it? Right over there? Yes. Bye-bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself, because you're worth it.